Hello, and thank you very much for coming along this evening. Tonight we're going to look a little bit at what's called the transition to sustainability and transition studies in general. We've not been able to make the transition to sustainability yet, but if we don't, we won't be sustained. That is, we become extinct, or civilizationally, that is, in terms of our whole civilization, we're going to collapse. So the urgency to do something to move towards strategies of sustainability is increasing. We're running our entire civilization on non-renewables, and we can't expect to be renewed when the non-renewables are not renewed. So we're in deep trouble here, and we need to think out strategies for movement to sustainability very quickly. We've talked about this in the past, but it's also available to you on Transition Studies, the website, and you can clue into it whenever you get a chance. Transitions to sustainability are available through discussions like that and lecture series like this one that came out of Harvard. Take a look. Okay, well, thanks very much for coming along today. We are in fact going to go over an initiative we set up here for all the students in the sustainability program, and in fact for the wider public. Many students who haven't taken my courses don't know about it yet. My name is Weiskel, and we set it up initially in our courses, but we set it up as a way of communicating between our courses and having students be able to communicate with each other. It's a facility called Transition Studies, and in fact it's become a metaphor for a new approach to a lot of the different sustainability programs courses. And so I've entitled this today called Transitions to Sustainability, Some Strategies for Surviving the Anthropocene. You've heard about the Anthropocene, I'm sure, in several of your courses. And you'll see how it relates to this question of sustainability studies. Basically, there's a huge and emerging debate, not just on this campus, but in our culture as a whole, and in fact way beyond America, in the world as a whole, between kind of techno-scientific salvationism on the one hand, and a eco-stable stability paradigm or sustainability paradigm. And it's obviously contrasted as polar opposites of approaches to survival in the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene is the period of history in which humans are the dominant geologic force on the Earth's surface. It's clear that as a human species we're engaged in trajectories, that is in tendencies and projected movements that aren't sustainable. If we keep it up, we're going to be going off the cliff, over the edge, beyond the bounds, whatever metaphor you want to use. We're going in directions that can't be sustained on a finite ecosystem that we inhabit on Earth. So the question is, what is your approach to that? And how are you going to survive the Anthropocene? Well, one approach has been the one that's emphasized through a lot of American education, which is based on the principle of exceptionalism. Somehow we're set apart from nature. We're not like the rest of the natural systems. We have intelligence. We're human beings, and we like to extend that sense of exceptionalism in America to we're Americans, and we have a constitution, and we're democratic, and all of those things which set us apart from the rest of the world, and the rest of creation for that matter. And the attempt in that effort is to try to sort of wall yourself off from the rest of the system and concentrate on monopolizing power, usually physical power or explosive power, and power to control the actions of other species or other human groups. That's the one approach, based on the notion that we're struggling for existence. And it's just a matter of acquiring all of the almost infinite resources out there and harnessing the finite sources of energy. The other approach is, in fact, totally opposite, and it has to do with acknowledging the metaphor that we're not apart from nature or from other groups or from anything, that we are a part of nature. We are one human species on a global ecosystem. If we want to survive, we better figure out strategies for surviving within natural, biogeochemical, and ecosystemic processes, not in trying to resist them, control them, dominate them, or whatever. That is a strategy of sustainability, and basically in the long term, you get it represented by these kinds of different approaches. This unlimited growth and overshoot of carrying capacity has been characteristic of what one boom-bust cycle after another has characterized the Western industrial societies, and you could argue that it's inevitable in the future that we're going to go in effect through one boom-bust cycle after another, and the key to surviving the Anthropocene is to get more and more of the energy to be able to mobilize more and more control within this inevitable boom-bust cycle. That's a myopic view, according to the opponents of it, who suggest that no, the only long-term strategy for survival is to learn how to live within limits and to begin to recognize that we have to explore the science of human survival for long-term survival in a future that is hopefully indefinite, but that within the parameters of a finite ecosystem. Now, that's a tension that's in all of our courses. It's in all of the courses in Harvard and well beyond. This isn't unique to the sustainability program, but what we're looking at in the sustainability program is something along the lines that were inspired by students down at the New School. Probably heard of this. But we're going to introduce you to, in effect, the strategies for doing this in real time. That is, you're going to be able to call up a transition studies website and look at and monitor on a regular basis things like this insight from the students working on sustainability down at the New School in New York. This is a student initiative down there, as it is here at Harvard. Most of the pressure for sustainability has come from the younger generation, not the old-timers. We were used to teaching our courses rather comfortably on the chemistry of this or the physics of that or the nature of climate change independently of sustainability questions until the students said, ooh, wait a minute, what about sustainability? And it was in that vein that student pressure led to the development of the whole new course sequence in the sustainability program. At the New School, it's the students themselves who initiated it as well.
This is an annual student-run event focused on youth-led transitions to urban sustainability, resilience, and justice.
Now that's it. Transitions to urban sustainability and justice. This is the focus of an urban school on, okay, how are we going to make cities sustainable? In New York City, that's quite a challenge.
Consumption is a really important thing that crosses a lot of disciplines. We really wanted to pick something that a lot of people from all parts of the New School could relate to and bring in their own unique ideas.
One of the facets of Sustainapalooza is that we acquire seed funding to distribute among presenters of student projects that are in need of funding to continue their good work.
Our students want to be dealing with real-world issues And in New York City, we have real issues to deal with, and not just climate change and its effect on New York or other cities around the world, but the way in which we have to deal with inequity and justice issues in the city.
Recycling has an environmental component, economic component, but also a very strong social component to it.
We need to look at the full scope of what it takes to make an object and what it takes to dispose of it. I'm seeing my project as a way to catalyze conversation.
Now you could see that mirrored in many of the courses we give here. We have sort of full cost accounting courses and the like, which allow you to start to look at the waste stream as well as the supply stream in anything. And it's particularly that theme that we're going to try to connect through sustainability studies.
We're using 860,000 styrofoam trays per day in New York City schools. Without a doubt, having the Parsons in the New School walk into that very first meeting with us to a partnership with Department of Ed school food directors. By bringing the university in on a partnership, it validated the project.
There's a lot of international students and a lot of students in all kinds of industries. You know, I come from a fashion design background, and so to now work with people from all kinds of other industries has been really helpful to kind of incorporate that into what we do as well.
The panel speakers and the seminars really attest to the amount of effort the students put into really thinking through what sustainable consumption means, to draw in a broad diversity of participants, to cross-pollinate thinking about waste and sustainability.
Now, clearly this is a pitch for the New School, and I'm not here to give you a pitch for the New School. They have a very interesting program, though, initiated by students to start looking at sustainable consumption as a whole field that they want to, in effect, introduce to the faculty and start saying, okay, let's get education on the things that we really care about. Well, here we've started to do this through a course called ENVR E106, and if you haven't taken it yet, you should sign up for it next year. You couldn't have taken it last year because this year was the first year we did it. Take a look. Okay, thank you very much for looking at this video. This is a scripted video of a new course that George Buckley and myself, Tim Weiskel, are trying for the first time this semester. So congratulations, you're part of a new experiment altogether. That means, among other things, that you can look back at previous editions of this course because they're running. So we're going to try to describe pretty briefly here what's involved with this course. It's part of the sustainability degree at the Extension School, and it can be taken independently of the degree itself. You can sign up either for graduate credit, for undergraduate credit, or as an auditor. No credit whatsoever, you have no assignments to submit, whatever. You can just sort of watch all of the lectures, get access to all the material we'll be presenting, but you don't have to do anything by way of submitting material. And several people have chosen to do that. In any case, it's part of the sustainability degree if you are doing a graduate degree, and part of the undergraduate completion of things if you're doing the undergraduate part. It's called Envisioning a Sustainable Future because we spent a lot of time in the past talking about a critique of one aspect or another of what's going on and not allowing students a chance to think about, okay, where are we moving toward? What would sustainability look like in whatever field I'm interested in? Who's working on that? How can I get some course credit time to look into that? Who's in effect thinking 20, 30 years down the road about a sustainable future? So it's that challenge we're taking on in this new course. And the subtitle is Managing and Protecting the Environment. Okay, well, I'll let you look at that at your own pace or speed. I'm not here to pitch that course, although it is something you want to take if you haven't had a chance to take it yet. The question I want you to focus on, though, is the new tools that we're making available for you in this course and in the others out in what's called this platform for transition studies. You might ask, as a lot of people did ask of me in the UN when I was down there talking about it, why transition studies? What's the word transition studies refer to? Why is it something you want to focus on? Well, at the time I made the statement, and you can see it very succinctly here in transition studies just by calling it up. Take a look.
We're a fossil fuel dependent civilization, independent of what nationality you are. Our modern civilization is dependent on fossil fuel. We have to get to being a solar sustainable system. There's a bit of a transition, right? Transition studies are what's now in every discipline, every department, every university.
It's an international movement, and basically it focuses on this whole question, and you can look at it further off the website here. What are transition studies? It's moving from this boom-bust logic to sustainable futures logic. And it undergirds every course in the system. For that reason, we've created this new Transition Studies website. And this website is a running video blog upon which you can start to do your research, but certainly not end your research. The whole point of it is that it's a research platform, a jump-off spot, if you will. Look it up under transition-studies.net, and you're out to the races, as it were. There is what it looks like, and I'll lead you through some of its features, which you can use now in any course. In fact, anybody can use it inside or outside of Harvard. Initially, we set it up, Zach Zavitas and I initially set it up as a way of handing notes back to each other forth and to say, have you heard about this? Or I'd like to talk about this in next lectures. What do you think? And we'd send these notes back and forth in emails. And we finally said, well, why don't we just post them? And you can go look at it on the posting. And then we said to ourselves, well, why just you and me and the other TAs in the course? Why not the students? I mean, students have something to do with the courses here. And we figured that instead of standing up at the blackboard and writing out the name of a source or asking you to write down a list that we put up in a slide, it would be much better use of your time and our time as well just to put it out there as a constant source of notes for your own use. And as it turns out, we didn't have to do a whole lot of programming behind this because the WordPress environment, which is freely available out on the net, provides a great repository for this material. What we do is add notes to it. But at the same time that we've taken a note, we've added it to this, and it becomes a note for you as students in this system, and in fact for the wider world. So it's, in this sense, I wanted to show you a bit about this platform. You can read about how it got set up if you hit the About and look at that. Or to get back to the home page by hitting home here. But then you can see right off the bat that we're selecting news in some cases and segmenting it into different categories. I don't know if you can zoom in on that a bit just to see the different categories that we've been putting up there. We were focusing for a while on climate issues, so when you drag your arrow over the Paris COP meetings, the Conference of Party meetings, you get a series of other alternatives down here. And that's generally the case. If you drag your mouse over a particular entry, you'll get other things related to it. For example, this is a global climate change issue, which if you just click on that, you'll get stories within just the titles of the stories within this WordPress environment relating to climate change. When you get to the bottom of the page, you'll usually see something older posts, it says down here, and you can click on that and go back to the previous post before that. But all you're getting in this index search is just the title and first paragraph. It's not a thorough index. If you see something you want to look at, for example, police arrest 120 plus water protectors in the Dakotas, you click on that title, and what happens? Well, you get the story. Click on the story, and you're out
Today's show in North
to the story.
ongoing standoff at Standing Rock, where thousands of Native Americans representing more than 200 tribes from across the Americas are resisting the construction of the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline, which...
Now, you've heard about this in the news. This will allow you to get the background information on it and make sure you start taking notes with precision about when these things occur. This was published on the 24th of October 2016. But that just tells you when we put it up there. It doesn't tell you the date of the story of the course. You have to go to the source material for that.
which is slated to carry oil from North Dakota.
And you'll see that, in fact, it was put up by them on the same day, October 24th. Now, did it happen that day? No. They're reporting on something that happened before then. So don't misapply the research in this platform. Don't, in fact, think that it's sufficient to cite the resources within transition studies. You have to go back to the source material that transition studies is only posting. In this sense, transition studies is a switchboard to get access to these original sources. In this case, the YouTube report from Democracy Now! If you want further details on the Democracy Now! Source, you have to click on that and go out to their website, in this case their YouTube page, and click About and find out who they are, right? This is why we say the Transition Studies website is not the end of your research, it's just the beginning of it. You have to go back to the sources behind the material that's posted there if you're going to do a thorough research job. But it's a very useful way to get into material very quickly. As I said, we were there just on the basis of having called up transition studies, dragged down the menu, and clicked climate change. Well, within climate change, suppose we wanted to look at just the question of fracking, for example. We could drag our mouse over global climate change and down to fracking. Or the Dakota Access Pipeline and Democracy Now!'s coverage of it, or Democracy Now!'s coverage of the Keystone XL pipeline. You see, that's the one over here. If there's a further subset to a topic, it's listed over on the right of these access points. Nuclear issues, for example. Well, there's just two indicated as subtext here. Nuclear is the more general one, and you'll get things, for example, from this morning. Rather shocking indication from the BBC reporting on America. This is a very important aspect of this transition studies piece. We take in resources from everywhere we hear about them, usually in the English language. That is, that's the language we're used to dealing with. But in some cases, we'll get the China Daily Report that's been translated into English. It's important to realize that we are not endorsing these things. We're not approving them. We're not filtering them on the basis of some sort of precondition or ideological purity or anything like that. We're serving up this material for you to make judgments about it. So this is not a signature of endorsement in any respect. But it is fascinating to me that the BBC was very interested in the U.S. nuclear statements coming out of diplomats. World nuclear ban not realistic, says U.S. ambassador to the UN this morning. I would bet you don't get a lot of reporting on what the U.S. ambassador is saying to the UN in the American press. It's what foreigners are listening to from American envoys. It's pretty staggering. You'll see that in the last few weeks, the new administration in Washington is trying to reposition the United States on nuclear issues globally. And it's doing so in a very interesting way. If you go back to the other titles in this, you'll see there is a headline linked out of another news source that's already been taken down. Trump administration looking at new nuclear posture.